All right, guys, welcome back to the Next Level Business Podcast. We've got a special guest today. I'm here with Shane Mara and Cesar. What's going on, man? How you doing?
What is going on, Josh? Thank you for having me. Shane, how are you?
Doing good, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, definitely.
So I was recently interviewed on Cesar's podcast. He has a great podcast. You've been going how strong? How many episodes are you in right now?
I'm at 125 that have already streamed, and probably another 40 that haven't come out yet.
Yeah, nice.
That's
man.
pretty amazing. I can tell you, we're in mid-20s right now, and that's quite a feat, man, to do that many shows. I'm telling you.
Yeah, you know what? I love it, and it's not only the fact that you get to do a lot of them. You get to meet so many different people, get so many different ideas, and just the networking that goes with that, which I'm pretty big on that too.
Yeah, I concur with that. We've experienced that same thing. That's the cool part about the show too, for sure.
Right.
So Cesar, you have is your book already out, or you're writing a new book?
I'm writing a new book. That book is going to be coming out in about a month and a half, give and take. It's called "You Can Overcome Anything" when you with a definite purpose. So when you have a definite purpose, you can overcome anything.
Awesome. So we always like to start off with the backstory, and I know you got a great one. Just reading more about you. So why don't you tell us, where you came from, what you had to go through, where you are today, just details about it.
Yeah, definitely. So I was born in Mexico City, and I always tell people that my story really started when I was born. And the only reason I say that is because I never met my biological father. I was born into just one parent, which is my mom. And I was born into a very poor society, right? We didn't have anything to show for. And I tell people that my story started there because it really did, right? My mom, we were really poor. It was my mom, my older brother, and my grandmother. And we lived in this place that I call home, which was really no more than 250 square feet, made out of sheet metal, plywood. There was no running water, no electricity, really right on top of dirt. The interesting part, though, is that we enjoyed it. That was our reality. And, again, it wasn't even our house, by the way. We were actually renting that place from somebody else. And it was good, though. It was our home. Now, it wasn't until the age of 4. I had just turned 4 a couple of months after I turned 4. My mom decided to take her own leap of faith and decided to leave us behind. My grandmother, my older brother, myself, leave us behind in Mexico. And she came and migrated to the States. And that was, definitely a life-changing experience for me and a turning point, because at the age of 4, I had to start working to be able to provide for ourselves, right? And so I never had a childhood as you would any other kid, where you go to school, you play, and you do all these different things. I didn't really have that. I didn't have the luxury. As a matter of fact, my life was, you go to school, you come home, you eat whatever there is. Sometimes we didn't have anything to eat. I said we had the Mexican specialty dish, which is really a tortilla with a grain of salt. And I got to tell you, though, that's actually pretty awesome. I still like that now. Like, I can do that every day, and I'm good with it. But there were times we didn't have anything to eat except that. And I will come home, eat, do my homework, and then I will go and work and do whatever we had to do. We actually used to sell stuff at the flea market, cookies, donuts, whatever. So we would actually bake that at the house and then go out and sell it. And I say that we didn't do good in that business because we had to graduate. And I say we graduated from that because, at the age of 7, I started sewing clothing. So if any of you guys want to, a Halloween custom, let me know. I can probably sew that for you, right? But we ended up buying our own sewing machine. And we all had our own sewing machine, and we used to do that. We used to sew for a living. And so it wasn't until the age of 10 that I came to the States. And again, I think the fact that I worked as a kid and the teachings and everything that I went through has built me to who I am now, the person that I am. And there's still so much for me to accomplish, right? There's been so many ups and downs, but it was that beginning that got me to where I am right now. Yeah.
Well, you were saying you were working at the age of 7, not because you wanted to, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was one of those things where that's, I needed to do it. Otherwise, we couldn't provide. So it was a necessity, right? It wasn't something that I wanted to do. It was more of a necessity.
That's an amazing story, man, by the way, because, kids today, you make them get a job, 12, 13, you make them mow the yard, and they're screaming, they're crying, and there you are at 7.
Yeah. Yeah,
just to provide and help pay the bills for the whole family. That's a great story.
Exactly. And obviously I'm not saying that, hey, go out and work at the age of 7. I don't condemn that. At the end of the day, though, that was my reality. Like, I had to do that to be able to provide. And I remember one time, like, I wanted to go out and play with my friends. In Mexico, you play soccer, right? So I wanted to go out and play. And I remember my grandmother, literally, she went and pulled me with a belt and was like, you got to get back to work. Like, I didn't have the luxury. Like, I couldn't even get out or a way to do that. And she was tough in that sense, but I also realized now, seeing it back now, it was like, wow, there were so many lessons to learn from that, and the tenacity and not giving up. And I've learned so much from my grandmother that I'm like, that has helped me build who I am now,
Yeah, for sure. And I can tell you, man, when you do what you did at that young of an age and the way she drove you, you're probably a dynamite hard worker right now, right?
I'm definitely doing my best every single time, right? And for sure, I mean, I have a passion of not giving up, for sure. I don't believe that there's any kind of failures. The only true failure is when you stop trying, when you give up and you don't get up. Yeah. Going back to that, when I came to the age of 10, I came to the States for the first time at the age of 10, or second time, sorry, at the age of 10. And I got to tell you, that was another lesson that I've learned, right? Coming to the States, not knowing how to speak the language, being really literally in a foreign country, not having any friends, and just feeling out of place. There was a lesson that I go back now and I realized it, and I know many people even now might be going through that in some sort of content, is that for me, I just felt out of place. I felt like this was not for me. And the person that is my dad, who it was my stepdad, but I see him as my dad. I remember when I first came here, I actually got into it with him at the age of 10. I'm like, man, I don't belong here. Like, just send me back to Mexico. I don't want to be here. And I'm glad he didn't listen. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation, right? Except that lesson right there is like, think about it for 1 second. I was afraid of being uncomfortable in this great nation, and I wanted to go back to what I was comfortable. I wanted to go back to being poor. I wanted to be, to work. I wanted to have that lifestyle because that's what I was comfortable with. Yet I was so afraid to be uncomfortable, and for the first time, not having to work. For the first time, maybe having an opportunity at life. Yet I was afraid of that. So is that saying where sometimes we hold back from doing something great because we are afraid of being uncomfortable to get to the comfortable area in our lives? And so to me, that was a huge lesson. And I recognized that's what I was taking. I wanted to go back and being that person because, again, that's what I knew. I was comfortable with that. And so I said, you know what about we just surrender? Not surrender to give up, just surrender to accept, to recognize, to reflect and say, well, if this is going to be my new reality, I have to deal with what emerges. What do I need to do? And so within 2 years, I learned the language. I actually became a schoolboy. Back in Mexico, I was a troublemaker. Here, I became a schoolboy, and I was working on my language. I was working on my skills. I was working on all of that. And throughout my high school years and all of that, I did pretty good for myself in terms of academically. I did pretty good. And yet, at the age of 16, I had another, I guess, setback, if you want to put it that way, or maybe another lesson. I had my daughter at the age of 16. So just being here 6 years in this country, I had my daughter at 16. And that was another lesson for me because I said, you know what? I'm going to make sure that my daughter does not go through the same things that I went through as a kid, where I had to work. I got to make sure that I do something to provide for her and give her the things that I didn't have. And so she became my motivation at that point, right? And so, again, you go through life with all these ups and downs. And for me, it was like, okay, well, I got to get to work. I'm a kid having a kid, yet I got to make the best out of it,
Wow. Man, you had a lot of hardship growing up, man.
I did. And even looking back again, the biggest lessons that I think I can take from all of that is that no matter how hard it is, it's not what you're going through, it's how you react to those different circumstances in your life, right? And so for me, I said, well, I need to take care of my daughter. I need to continue to educate myself. I went to school. I got my associate's degree in computer networking. Even though at that point, though, I was still going through some challenges not having really, or growing up with a male figure. And I'm not saying that that's the, the reason for it, yet I kind of allude some to that, is I had a really bad temper. You talk to me now, you don't see that. Back then I was a very angry person. I had a very short fuse. You will say something to me, I will backfire immediately with a response or with actions. And so that led me to my next hurdle, my next obstacle, right? My very first book is You Can Overcome Anything, Even When the World Says No. And it's a memoir of my life, because I went through so many different things, from being poor, from having a kid at 16. And then my next big obstacle is I had a very short fuse that I got into an argument, a fight with my daughter's mom, that led me to pretty much beating her up and land me in jail at the age of 22. And I went back to this, and I'm like, this is not who I am. I cannot be this person. This is not my reality. This cannot be my life. Yet at that moment, I wasn't thinking. I was not really analyzing. I didn't take the time to reflect on my attitude or whatever I was going through that led me to jail, which at that point, I'm like, crap, I'm going to lose everything. I'm going to lose seeing my daughter. I'm going to break up on this relationship. I might lose my job. I lost my integrity. What are people going to think of me? There were so many things going on. And, after coming out of jail, my daughter's mom ended up dropping the charges. Thank God she did. Otherwise, I would have been locked up for I don't know how many months or years for those actions. And I said, you know what? I got another chance at life. I cannot be this. And sure enough, I lost, we ended up breaking up. My daughter ended up obviously moving with her, and I was having her part-time. And I said, you know what? I got to get my crap together. And I went back and I got my bachelor's degree. I continued to work on myself. And then at 25, I bought my first property. 26, bought a second property. 27, bought another property. So I started building my real estate portfolio. It was that tenacity. And then the housing market hit, and that took a dump, and I went with it. I lost all my properties. I foreclosed on all of them because I was not fully educated. I was not getting any mentorship. I was not talking to anybody. I wanted to do everything myself. And so I gave up on real estate for a couple of years. And then I realized that, you know what, my job is to go back and get a master's degree, because that's what I know what to do, is be educated and then move up on the corporate ladder. And so I did. I got my MBA. I went and was doing pretty good at corporate America. I had a really good job. I was traveling all over the place, not only in the U.S., but internationally. And I was making, well over six figures. And something hit me, and I'm like, you know what? This is not it. There's got to be more for me. There's got to be a bigger purpose. And I believe that people that are watching this, that people that are listening to this, if you're watching this and you're listening to this, do know that whatever you believe in, whether it's God or the universe, the fact that you're doing and listening to this right now, that means that greater power is not over with you. You have a bigger purpose in this life. And for me, I felt like there's a bigger purpose. And it took me back to when I was a kid. It took me back to how I grew up and everything that I went through in my life. And I said, you know what? I'm here to inspire people. I'm here to motivate people. I'm here to empower people. And I'm going to take my own leap of faith. And I left my corporate job to follow a dream and follow this journey of being an entrepreneur. Let me tell you, though, that was very hard. It took me 7 months to actually quit my job. Like the day that I said I'm going to quit and give my 2 weeks notice, I didn't do it. I got cold feet. And it took me 7 months. It cost me relationships. It cost me integrity, many different things. Yet I finally did it. And I'm like, okay, now what? Like, let's start on this, right? And so I realized that, again, going through all of that, there's so many different lessons. And it's the idea of you wanting to actually do something and move forward in your life.
Man, you're inspiring me, bro. That's a great story. It's the perfect title for that first book, man, because you overcame a lot.
Yeah.
Man, what a story.
Man, thanks. And I got to tell you, I mean, it hasn't been easy, as you guys know, right? Being in this journey is not an easy journey. And I think what comes down to that is go back to what is your purpose? What are you here for, right? And again, for me, working in corporate America, I thought that that's what I wanted to do. And again, I'm not knocking no 9 to 5. I love my job. It was a good job. Yet I realized, though, if I want to impact more people, and if I want to give people the opportunity or at least the hope of being able to do something bigger in their life, then I can only reach X amount of people through corporate America. Let me do something more, because it would have been nice for me to had somebody at when I was 7 or when I was 4, when I was working, to say, you know what, you're gonna make it. You're gonna make it. Here's a little bit of hope and faith. And so for me, it was like, that's my purpose. That's where I want to be, and that's what I want to do.
How long ago did you leave that corporate job?
It's been about 40 years now, 3 to 4 years. Yeah.
Well, let's fast forward to today. You're a busy man, bro. You got a lot going on. You write books. You got a podcast. You got a consulting company, you know, where you coach, you know, other folks. That's a lot of stuff going on, man. How do you balance all of that?
Yeah, and you know what? What's interesting is that when I left my corporate job, I had gotten back into real estate about 2 years prior to leaving my corporate job. So I got back into real estate. I'm like, you know what? Let me try this again. By the way, from the time that I got locked up to my real estate, I did a couple other things. I started doing computer networking, and I was selling computers. I tried different ideas. That didn't go too good. Then I started this company, maintenance company, you know, cleaning offices and all that stuff. That didn't work out too good. And then finally, I got back into real estate. When I left my corporate job, I said, you know what, let me just focus 100% on real estate. And I talk about this in my book. I feel like during that time, though, I was also going through a transformation phase. I was going through what I consider to be my dark stages, not because I was in a dark place where I was, you know, in drugs or doing any of that. It's just in my mind, I was in a dark place in terms of just transforming myself, finding myself again. Being the fact that I took this leap of faith, like I needed to really find myself. And so with that, I made a lot of changes in my life. Part of those changes were I started to associate myself with different types of people, going to networking events, meeting people, doing a lot of those things, right? The second thing that I ended up doing is I ended up cutting off some habits that were not good habits, right? And for me, it was really reading. The last time I read something, by the way, was back in high school, and I only did that because that was a requirement by my English teacher. I didn't like to read, but I wanted to educate myself and start reading more stuff. Listening to podcasts like this, you know, people that have an inspiring story, you know, just really working on my mind. And so I went through all these changes. While I was going through all those changes, I found other things that were of an interest. So now real estate was one of them, and then other things came about, right? Just being in these networking events. One of the first things that came about was writing a book. And I said, well, here's another lesson that I've learned. I think at that moment, it's like, yeah, this sounds like a good idea if I can write a book. Except the lesson that I learned is that I talked myself into not writing the book to begin with. So how many times do we go through life and we have this business idea, we have this boyfriend or girlfriend or that we want to, you know, approach, or we want to do something with our lives, or, hey, I want to lose weight. And then you talk yourself out of doing that because there's so many things going in your head, right? And that's what, for me, that was that. I talked myself in, you know, out of doing it. There's an African proverb that says, if there's no enemy within that can do you no harm, there's no enemy outside that can do you no harm. Yet you got to work on your mind, right? And so I was telling myself, Cesar, you're not a writer. No one's going to want to buy your book. Who are you kidding? Like, just get this idea out of your head. And I talked myself out of it. It wasn't until like 2 months after the fact that I came back to it. I'm like, you know what? What about if I change the frame? What about if I change the way I see it? What about if I do this for a self-accomplishment? What about if I do this so that that my daughter can have something to look back and say, you know what, I'm proud of my dad. Like, it leaves something behind. When I changed the way I saw it and the framing of that, and this could be in anything in our lives, right? When you start seeing, like, what if I do want to do this business because there's an opportunity? Like, you change the way you're looking at it, you'll be amazed what you're going to be able to do. When I changed that frame, I started writing my book, and I finished my book 2 weeks prior to me actually being able to publish that. The lesson from that came that, you know what? You can do whatever you want. You got to just look at it from a different lens. Number 2, you don't know who's going to resonate with that message. And I'm glad I did. And so that's where my book idea came about. And then from there, my podcast grew. And I'm like, well, what about if I can network with more people and have more of that? Then from that, I have a book series that came about, and my consulting business. So all of that just came into place based on me networking and being around different people and looking at the different ideas and the possibilities.
And, that's the great lie that, the enemy tells us, that you're not good enough, that you can't do that. Nobody's going to read your book. Why are you bothering with that? And I got the same enemy telling me the same stuff, man. So
Right.
That's just, but when you press through that, right? Like you press through that, and on the other side, look what happened.
Right. Yeah.
All the doors started opening up. And that's just what life is all about. So that's just another word, man.
So when is the book coming out?
The next book is going to come out in about a month and a half. So I would say middle of March.
Where can people find that?
Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah, you can just actually type in my name on Amazon, Cesar Espino, and you get all my books, different books that I have published. I have 7 so far.
Okay, make sure to check that out, guys, on Amazon, so you can learn more about Cesar and how he overcame it.
Yeah.
So out of all the things that you do, what do you enjoy the most? What do you get the most satisfaction out of?
Man, that's definitely a hard one, and I'm gonna tell you why. Somebody asked me, when do you take time off and when are you working? And my answer to that is I'm always working and I'm always taking time off. I think when you get to the point where you really enjoy what you're doing, it doesn't seem like work, and it comes back to like that enjoyment, right? I definitely like the real estate side of things. I definitely like the writing and the podcast, just because you can get to more different people and reach them. I would say they're all kind of like, head to head. I enjoy a little bit of everything. Like every day I'm either doing, like before this, I was actually calling sellers for real estate. And I was working on my consulting business, and I'm on a podcast, and I did a podcast show earlier today. Like every day I kind of do the same thing, right? Because again, I don't see it as work. I see it as something that I really enjoy.
Nice, man. So you currently you came to the U.S. You had your mindset change. What are some of the things that you could advise people on that are going through a tough time right now, like coronavirus, right? Like it crushed a lot of business owners, and people want to give up. Restaurants got shut down, that kind of stuff, and you've been through it all.
Yeah.
What would you tell some people?
Yeah, there's a couple of things I would say. Number one, I would say go back to what is your definite purpose. What is the one thing you're trying to accomplish? And if you were to die tomorrow, that you feel like you satisfied that and that purpose, right? Always going back to that. The second thing I would tell you, and I'm not a relationship expert, but my best relationship advice for you is make sure that you don't cheat on your future with your past. Okay. Because a lot of times we tend to get hung up on the past. The past is nearly an experience, an educational experience. There's a lot of lessons that can be extracted from that. And so I would say, look at where you're at now, where you feel like you're falling behind. Evaluate, like really breathe and just take your time to see, okay, why am I in this place? And look back at those lessons, those things you can learn from the past, but don't let those things take the best out of you, right? A lot of times we tend to allow the fear take away the opportunity, right? And maybe the last thing I can leave you with is that the choice and the decisions that we make today will impact the quality of life that you're going to have tomorrow. Okay. And so when you start thinking about it from that perspective, like for me, like if I would have taken that advice that I'm giving you right now when I was 22, I would have never been in jail, because those choices, those decisions were going to impact my future. Right. And so again, being able to just breathe, analyze it, reflect, surrender, to evaluate, and then don't let the past take away the opportunity for the future.
It's beautiful. How do people find you, Cesar?
Yeah, the best way to find me, you can go to my website, CesarEspino.com, or you can find me at pretty much every social platform.
Cesar R. Espino. Well, sir, you're a true inspiration, and I mean that, man. What a great story you shared with us, and just tons of great wisdom, man. I know people be inspired by that, and great story of overcoming literally everything. I can't imagine what you've been through, but it was the launching pad for who you are today, and it's the reason why you are so successful today. So thanks again for coming on the show, man.
Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Josh. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll have you back for a part 2. Sorry we had to cut you off.
No, you're good.
Had another podcast lined up, but here we got a comment from Innocent. He said, "Hey, very inspiring." That's one of our members there in our group. But yeah, guys, make sure to check Cesar's books out on Amazon and follow him. Check out his podcast as well. You want to tell them a little bit about your podcast?
Yeah, my podcast is called You Can Overcome Anything Podcast Show. And the idea behind it is bringing people from all walks of life that are here to share their stories on how they overcame whatever obstacles they might have gone through habits and or mind changes.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. It was really inspiring to know about your story. You know, I'm an immigrant myself, and I love to hear the underdog, made it big,
Yeah, no, definitely. I really appreciate having me on your show, guys.
All right.
Hey, you're welcome. Our pleasure.